建筑会线上的朋友们，大家下午好！欢迎您在周四下午的3点半准时收看我们的公开课直播。今天我们请到的嘉宾是来自 State of Clad 品牌的 Jonathan 和 Brad， 他们也是新西兰全国范围内轻量级外墙系统的专家，以及 Brad 是南岛的 BDM 同事，他们将会今天加入我们的公开课行列。Hi Jonathan and Brad, welcome to the webinar, and please say hi to our audience and briefly introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name's Jonathan Brooks and I'm the National Cladding Systems Manager for State of Clad.
And I'm Brad Purnell, and I'm the South Island Business Development Manager.
Cool, great to have you guys here. 今天我们公开课的主题呢是介绍关于 State of Clad 外墙系列产品的应用以及特点。它是一种轻型的水泥纤维板的板材外墙，是一种预制的外墙系统。到现场直接安装，不需要刷漆以及后期的维护，并且呢是中高密度开发项目的不二选择。更为突出的是，在性价比非常高的同时还有很多的颜色纹理外观可以选择，为新建项目的千篇一律带来耳目一新的灵感。而且对很多开发商的朋友和建商朋友们来讲，这款产品也没有缺货断货的问题，能为您的项目推进带来较短的等待时间和更准确的工期，整体来说省时省力。好，那么说了这么多的好处，我将开始分享屏幕，由2位专业人士来为大家带来更专业的讲解。Okay, I'm just gonna start sharing my screen now, and let me know if you guys can see my screen. Yeah.
Yep, we can see that.
Okay, cool. Just whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Awesome. So, like Lily said, we're from the State of Clad. What we're here to do today is talk to you about some of the advantages of pre-finished cladding systems for construction in New Zealand, specifically sort of around medium density housing, but a lot of the things we're going to talk about today will appeal to and apply to detached residential building or larger commercial builds as well. Lily, if you can just jump to the next slide. So quickly, I just want to talk about who we are and who are State of Clad. So State of Clad's a relatively new name. We launched it this year. It's a bit of a new brand for us. And what it is it's what we used to call the lightweight systems business within NZ Brick Distributors. NZ Brick Distributors is a partnership company between our two parent companies, CSR Building Products and Brickworks Building Products. Both of those companies have been around for about 250 years between them and have a market capitalisation of well over 5 billion Australian dollars each. What that means for you guys is we're a company that's been around a long time, supported by some big corporates, and we're here to support you guys and look after yourself. We also have another brand in our business, which is the Brickery. That's a slightly different team, but within the same business, and they look after all of the clay brick side of our business. And if you've got any brick queries, feel free to get in touch with us. We can put you in touch with the right people there. We just slip over to the next slide. Excellent. So some of the things I want to talk about first are just some of the pressures that especially developers and clients are facing in that sort of medium density housing market. A big one at the moment, and it's been an ongoing issue for a number of years, is cost pressures. With medium density housing, typically developers are trying to build to a particular price point, and it's normally at the affordable end of the market. That typically doesn't lend itself to exciting or great design. So it's really trying to find the balance between a well-designed and exciting product that's really good quality, but also is affordable for the homeowner. And that's a really challenging pressure to try and balance. Along with cost pressures is obviously land values are quite expensive in New Zealand. So trying to get the most bang for your buck out of a particular site that you can acquire, and then also trying to balance that with council requirements for green space and communal spaces as well. Feeding into costs is also the time pressures and speed of building, and that's really been made worse over the last few years with COVID and supply chain issues from bringing products into New Zealand. Adding to that, you've got council guidelines and urban planning requirements around things like having multiple claddings on a build. Makes everything a lot more complicated. They would argue it's to improve the look and design, but it does. It adds more work for not just designers and builders, but also then more work means more costs for developers and eventually homeowners. Also, when you're working in medium density or larger commercial projects, when you don't have detached residential builds, you're dealing with intertenancy or IT walls, floors, different fire requirements, noise transfer and stuff. And that just, again, adds more pressure and more complication to these types of builds. And then probably one we run into a lot is conversations around maintenance, especially with cladding products, and especially when you're working on buildings that are taller than single story. If you're talking about, for example, a block of, say, 7 or 8 2 or 3 story townhouses, and they're all individually owned, trying to get all the owners to keep to a maintenance schedule can be quite difficult. And, if you're talking 20, 30 years down the track, making sure everyone is able to make sure they can keep the property maintained and up to scratch can be quite difficult. So that's some of the stuff we'll be covering off today.
Cool.
If we jump over to the next slide there, prefinished cladding does actually fix and answer some of those sort of pressures. A really big one for us is it takes away risk out of a build program. So if you don't have to paint or do other sort of finishing trades on site, it removes risks from things like weather delays or availability of subtrades to come on site to finish a project. And less subtrades on site keeps everything easier, cleaner, and like I said, takes the risk out of that build program. If you have less delays and everything, that leads to less costs and also less scaffolding hire, which again on multi-story buildings is quite important. Generally too, with pre-finished products, whether it's cladding or other products in a build, you typically get lower maintenance and generally a better quality finish as well, because those finishes are applied in a factory setting under controlled conditions, rather than trying to paint a product on site in whatever weather conditions you're dealing with at the time. So within State of Clad, we have 3 different cladding products, which I want to talk to you. If we just skip over to the next one, there we go. So we've got our Cemental Territory product, which has been around in New Zealand since 2014. And then we've got 2 new products we've just launched this year, which is Cemental Barestone and Cemental Surround. So I'll quickly run through Cemental Territory first. So like I said, Cemental Territory we launched in 2014, but it's actually been around a lot longer than that. It's a product we source out of Japan, and it's been manufactured over in Japan for 32, 33 years, and it's actually their leading cladding system over there. One of the big advantages with a Japanese product is geographically, seismically, dealing with sea spray zones, etc. Japan and New Zealand are very, very similar countries. So a product that's got a really long in-service history in Japan is going to perform quite well in New Zealand. Also, it's a very high-quality product, the Cemental Territory. It's quite exciting. It's a fibre cement product, but it's made slightly differently to typical fibre cement. Normal fibre cement claddings will be built up of layers, while Cemental Territory is a thick slurry that's forced into a mould, compressed into a mould to get the pattern, and then it's autoclaved in one piece. All of the panels are interchangeable, so you can actually mix and match different claddings, the look of different cladding systems on a single build, but using one system and one set of detailing and one installer. But it's all pre-finished and all very easy to use. If we jump over to the next slide, I've got the range that's available. So our current Cemental Territory range consists of 26 different colours and finishes. As you can see, there's a lot there, ranging from products that look like timber through to products that look like brick, stone, precast concrete, etc. We've recently updated our range. We deleted a number of finishes and introduced a whole lot of new ones. That was partly because of we wanted to update and have something new and exciting. And some of the new finishes that we've launched very recently this year, we're already seeing some really exciting uptake on. We jump over to the next.
I'm just going to stop you there for 1 second, because nowadays, like lots of architects and designers or even developers, they have the carries, to make the outside of their house or their project looks a bit more exciting. It's not just, boring weatherboard looking. So they would choose 2 different systems to put together. And I just want to emphasize to our audience right here is that with one system, you still have the option of have more than 1 or 2 materials that's used for this project. And in terms of installation, it's not that complicated because it's all the same. Yeah, sorry, I'm just going to interpret this part in Chinese to our audience. 所以其实现在大家知道啊，不管是中高密度的建房，还是我们就是独栋的房子，很多我们的设计师朋友以及开发商朋友，为了让这个项目在市场上更有竞争力，他们很多时候会选择将1种、2种，甚至有的时候3种不同的外墙材料运用到一起，给人这个项目看上去非常有不同的这个观感的这种设计感啊。而在运用多种材料的外墙的时候呢，最大的一个问题就是外墙的安装，因为它是不同的系统，所以如何把这2个系统去拼接到一起，以及在这个递交 building consent 的 application 的时候，这个材料上面的一些 detail 的 drawing 也会非常非常的复杂，或者说要求更高一些。那么我们现在的 Cemetery Territory 这个系统，大家可以看到屏幕上的颜色选择以及它的种类选择是非常多的，但是实际上当你在去做设计的时候，以及最后安装的时候，它其实可以帮您带来一些简化，因为它所使用的仅仅是1种系统。Okay, I'm gonna move to the next slides.
Excellent, thanks, Lily.
That's all good.
So these ones just show you a very quick overview of the system. The image on the left is when it's installed horizontally. The image on the right shows the sort of overview when it's installed vertically. So every single one of those finishes and panels that you saw on the previous slide can be installed either horizontally or vertically. So again, not only can you mix different finishes and different looks of panel, but also different installation methods. So it gives you even more sort of design flexibility. Also, all of these panels can be used internally as well. They are primarily designed as an exterior cladding, but they can be used internally.
Cool. Sorry, just there for 1 second. 所以其实大家可以看到啊，有可能就是屏幕上的这个细节图不是特别的清楚，但是我们的这个安装的一些 PDF 文件，我们这边都是可以在网站上找到的。大家可以看到它的安装呢，其实是已经有预制的卡槽，在安装的时候是可以互相卡紧的，对于在工地上干活的朋友们来讲，就是非常非常的简便并且呢，这个产品除了在使用在外部墙的外部的时候啊，它其实也是可以用于墙的内饰，这个在我们后面也会有非常多的项目图片可以给到大家参考。Sorry, back to you.
That's okay. So all of the systems, all of the territory products, are fixed with a clip. So there's no battens required like most cladding systems, but the clip does create a cavity, so it still meets New Zealand building code. It's just a different way of doing it. What that means is actually really fast and easy to install. Also, the client doesn't have to purchase battens, and you don't have to pay a builder to install battens and then come back and install the cladding later. It's all done at the same time, so it makes it quick and easy to go up. The images you see on your screen now are just some of the details that are in our technical manual. We have a couple of different corner details. We have what we call a preformed corner, which is an external corner manufactured out of the same material. So if you're using a finish like the brick look or a timber look, for example, the texture of that actually continues around the corner. And we do also offer an aluminium corner, which doesn't quite have the same design features, but it is more cost effective. So especially in medium density type builds where price is more important, that is an alternative that's available as well.
Cool. So would you say when the builder is purchasing to buy the cladding, they're actually buying the whole system? So the price they're paying per square meter comes with the battens and all the fixing, so they don't have to buy extra, and they will be delivered to the site at the same time? That's
correct. So when we supply everything's supplied all at the same time to site. Yeah, so there's no additional purchases needed. We supply a full system for you.
那么其实这个外墙还有一个非常非常大的优势呢，就是它不仅在安装的时候，它不需要大家单独再刷漆啊，并且呢，它的 batching 跟 fixing 都会在预定外墙的时候一起被送到工地上，所以其实在这个运输的成本以及安装的成本的情况下，它其实是没有那么多的等待时间，就更加的这个性价比高，并且非常的快捷方便。Okay, moving to the next slides for you.
So some of the advantages for territory, again, if we're talking sort of about this medium density type build, is really around being able to mix and match those different looks of cladding, but it uses a single system. So that saves time and money for a few different people here. It saves time and money for the architect because they've only got to design one system. They don't have to come up with details to junction between different cladding systems. It also reduces complexity and the amount of people needed on site, which saves money, and it reduces the time. So again, saving money and time for the developer and the builder as well. A really big part of our territory system is it is fully Codemark certified and has been since we had it launched in New Zealand in 2014. And we've actually just gone and renewed our Codemark certification for the product. So that's now recertified for another 3 years. Like I mentioned earlier, being Japanese, it's designed around seismic movement, and that's a key part of the system. So when we have small earthquakes in New Zealand, the panel is actually able to move independently of the structure of the building. Look, if we have another Christchurch type earthquake, another major one, it's not going to withstand that without any damage. But the typical stuff that we deal with on a daily basis in New Zealand is not going to cause any issues for this product. And also being pre-finished, it's very low maintenance. And that means reduced costs for the homeowner. Maintenance on Cementel territory is actually some of the lowest sort of maintenance requirements out there. Basically, the homeowner needs to wash it once a year, and then it needs a UV protective clear coat, and that happens after 30 years, so quite a way down the track.
Cool. And I'm just going to do a bit of interpretation. If you hear Chinese, that's what I'm doing.
Not a problem.
所以我看到有很多朋友现在刚刚进入到我们的直播间啊，欢迎大家的到来。今天我们的内容呢是预制的轻型水泥纤维外墙在新西兰的应用，然后由我们的 State of Clad 这个品牌带来。好，那么现在我们大家屏幕上看到呢是他们其中的一个系统，叫做Cementel Territory。这个产品最大的一个优势啊，就是最大的优势之一就是它从外形上有非常众多的选择。在这个房子的外观带来比较有设计感的同时呢，它就是在设计的同时，并不会增加更多 drawing 的复杂性。第二个呢，就是它是 fully Codemark certificate。Codemark 大家都知道是在新西兰认证的一个建筑标准然后这个产品是完全可以被 Council 所接受的。第三个呢，就是很多朋友说，哎呀，这个是轻型水泥外墙，我怎么听说这个新西兰这个地震对水泥外墙的一些要求会更高呢？是这个产品它是从日本经过多年的检验，并且应用在相同的地理环境的新西兰境内的，所以说它在地震时产生一些比较大的震动，我们的外墙是可以在木质的结构之外去进行互相的一个震动，抵消掉这个地震带来的对建筑的伤害。那么最后一个就是我们可能也有在观看直播的一些屋主朋友们比较关心的，那么这个外墙的维护成本有多高呢？它其实是市面上可以找到的几乎最低维护成本的产品之一了，因为它仅需要1年1次的冲洗，然后它有一个 UV coat， 这个是你的新房安装完成了之后30年之后才需要重复做的一个工作，所以并不需要日常的这个每几年就要对外墙进行一个重新刷漆啦，或者说是有一些磕碰这个维护成本几乎都是不存在的。好，我们来看下一页。We're moving to the next one.
Excellent. So now I've just got a few photos of some completed projects that have been completed with Cementel Territory. We'll run through these relatively quickly before we jump onto the other cladding systems. So these particular builds here, you see the building on the left is in our Savannah Cloud. The building on the right is actually in behind it in the development, and that's in our Woodlands Teak product. So in this particular build, they haven't mixed different claddings on one building, but they've done different buildings in different colours within one development. So again, lots of flexibility on how you do that. We just flick to the next one. This is an example of a build that has used two of our different products to give you the look of multiple cladding systems. The grey is what we call quarry concrete, and then Woodlands teak on the other side. Important thing to note with the Woodlands teak, which is also this building, is the panels have multiple planks, for want of a better term, make up a sheet, and each of those is slightly different colour. So you do get this colour variation. So it looks like natural cedar or natural timber, but without all the maintenance that goes with it. If we jump over to the next one, this is quite a high-end detached residential home, again using our quarry concrete, and the developer or the owners have also put in a timber louver screen type product just for a bit of extra detail. And then the next one is another medium density build, again using multiple cladding products. This is our quarry concrete and our Woodlands ebony, which is the dark coloured one. And then this next one is actually an Auckland project up in Manukau. It's the Siebel Hotel, which is just off the Southern Motorway, and that's a 6-storey hotel building entirely clad in Cementel territory. Although when I say entirely, the orange louvers next to the windows, unfortunately, that's not ours, but everything else is. And that was built, if I remember correctly, about 2017. And I was actually just out there a couple of months ago, and it still looks just as good as it did when it went up. And that's all to do with that low maintenance cladding that goes with it. Next image, this is another townhouse, and this is actually a mixture of a brick from the Brickery, our sister product, sister brand, and then our Woodlands Ebony product as well. So again, you can mix and match different claddings if you wish, although from our perspective with Cementel territory, one of the advantages is you can get a single look from one product. And if we just jump into this last image, this is another Auckland project. The downstairs there, that ground floor is actually, it looks like brick, but it's not. That's actually another Cementel territory product. And that was chosen because that site had some very strict and complicated engineering requirements around weight. And at the same time, Auckland Council required the developers to have brick on the ground floor. Unfortunately, where they weren't actually able to use brick. So Cementel territory let them meet a regulatory requirement that they wouldn't have been able to meet without a product like that. And the whole project turned out really quite well. That's in Simon Street, just out of the Auckland CBD.
Yeah, I drive past it all the time. It's very pretty.
So the next one next product we're gonna jump into is Cementel Surround. Now, I'll talk through some stuff for Cementel Surround, and Cementel Bare Stone is actually going to be very similar. It uses the same structure, but they are slightly different products. So I'll highlight the differences when we get to Bare Stone. Cementel Surround is a pre-finished compressed fibre cement sheet product. It's a painted finish, and we source it out of Austria in Europe. It's actually manufactured by a company called Eternit. And Eternit actually invented fibre cement back in the late 1800s. I believe it was 1894 or 1896. So, we're working with suppliers who really know what they're doing. These people literally invented the entire cladding type, and they've been doing it for over 120 years. That's the sort of people we like to work with, because we know that we're working with suppliers that can make sure that you have the right products. The surround panels are quite a lot larger, so they're 3 metres by 1.2 metres, and they're 8 mils thick. So they're quite a large format sheet, and they're available in a wide range of colours, and they're fixed on a different system. So there's an aluminium rail system that fixes. In Australia, surround is fixed with a steel rail system. In New Zealand, we've made the change to go to aluminium, mainly because we have a lot of coastline and it's going to be suitable for use close to the sea. All of these panels can be installed horizontally or vertically, but also with surround and bare stone, you've got a lot more flexibility from a design perspective, where you can actually cut them into zany shapes and angles to give a lot more sort of design flexibility. Again, like territory, it's primarily designed as an exterior cladding system that can be used internally. And I know there's been a number of projects around Australia and other parts of the world where it's been used internally, especially in areas like schools or other commercial type setups. If we jump over to the next slide, this has got our colour range or colour palette, and it's sort of broken into two. So we have what we call our primary palette, which is 5 colours, very architect friendly, and the colours are whitish, greyish, blackish, bluish and greenish. And then each colour has 3 different textures. So the base is just a smooth, flat panel. The leather has a leatherish sort of texture, and then string has a CNC engraved pattern in it, which is then coated. And then in our secondary palette, they're the bright colours. So the idea behind it is an architect or a designer will design more than likely primarily in the primary palette. They're neutral colours that work in a lot of different situations. And then the secondary palette will be to add pops of colour to a particular build. Again, some of the images and the colours don't really display great on a computer screen, but things like the Maya, the Strike, the Volta, they're extremely bright and vibrant colours. Like Maya's a really lovely colour. It's a bright yellow, but I can't see too many people wanting that on their house. Like, it'd be pretty full on. But using it in a primary school or a commercial setting, quite a different story. So that's sort of why we've got some of those bright colours there to give people some options, especially in those commercial spaces.
Yeah, as soon as I see the color on the right-hand side, I'm thinking of, kindergarten or like a primary school. It adds so much energy into the building, and it's really lovely, especially, when kids, they kind of want to like be naughty and hurt the wall. It's actually quite safe for them.
Yes, and compressed fibre cement is very dense and very hard wearing. I actually don't have a photo, but I might have to dig it out for another time. I've seen a project using that Maya, which is the yellow, in a train station in Sydney, and it's predominantly black with the yellow through it, and it looks really quite stunning. Yeah. It's a really good example of using those bright colours.
Yeah, it's great to have options.
Yeah. So we jump over to the next slide. Again, similar to territory, this is the overview. So how we work with the surround or barestone systems, at this point they're both the same, is there's a double aluminium rail system. So you have a horizontal rail, which is fixed into the structure of the wall, and that can be into timber frame, steel frame, or into a masonry wall, so either concrete block or precast concrete. And then those fixings are dependent on the wind load and the spacings. Then the vertical rails are for the panel joints, and then another one in the middle of the panel, and they are fixed to the horizontal rails. And then the panels are applied, and they're actually fixed with a pop rivet, which has a colour-matched head. That pop rivet also has a rubber gasket, so that allows a little bit of movement. You can see in the bottom left-hand corner of that image, that gasket does allow a little bit of movement. Similar to territory, it does help around seismic movement, but also just, especially the bigger you go with the building, you're going to get some differential movement in wind or just building movement over time.
May I just jump in here and ask, since it's a quite big piece of sheet, then how heavy is it, or like how easy or how hard it is to, lift it and install the cladding?
That depends on a few things. If you're as old as I am, it's not that easy. That's why we have younger people like Brad to help out. But a full sheet, for example, of surround, you're sort of talking 50 to 60 kilos. So they are quite big, heavy sheets. They're going to be multi-person lifts.
Right.
But they can be lifted into place. You pre-drill them. Once you get it up in place, you put a couple of rivets in. That's enough to hold it while you do the rest. So, but it's definitely not a single-person lift.
Right.
In saying that, Cementel territory is not light either. The Cementel territory panels are a little over 3 meters long by 455 mils wide, and they still weigh about 26 kilos a sheet. Sounds heavy, but interestingly, all of these systems are still classed as lightweight. Depending on the system, you're sort of talking somewhere between 17 and 21, 22 kilos per square meter on the wall. So a surround sheet, for example, is 3.6 square meters. So yes, 50 to 60 kilos, it's heavy, but that's 3.6 square meters that you're holding up in one piece.
Yeah, and I guess it's pretty dense as well, so it's not surprised that per square meter it's like quite heavy. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. If we jump over to the next slide, so some of the advantages of a product like Cementel Surround are actually going to be really similar to Cementel Territory, because we're talking about pre-finished fibre cement cladding system. So a lot of the inherent stuff that goes with that still apply. Things like it's low maintenance, easy to look after, reduce sub-trades and reduce time on site. Those things apply to all pre-finished systems. Some of the sort of specifics around Cementel Surround is being able to mix and match those colours and the textures to give different design looks are quite exciting. Also, the large format of the panels does let some of this product go up very, very quickly, especially if you've got large flat walls with not a lot of detail. Both Cementel Surround and Cementel Barestone, we're in the process of completing our code mark certification, and we expect to have that completed in hopefully in the next few weeks. Both of these products have been code mark certified for Australia, and we're working with exactly the same code mark certifier to do that for New Zealand. So luckily, there's not a lot of differences between Australia and New Zealand, and we do have similar building codes, and a lot of the testing requirements are the same. So that's already been done. We've already submitted everything. We're just waiting for that to come back. So hopefully that won't be too long.
Cool. So I'm just going to give a bit of reminder to our audience because someone was struggling of the PowerPoint size. 我看到有朋友在群里面说那个 PPT 的播放的那个大小有一些小啊，如果说您现在是用手机在观看的话啊，应该它的大小是跟就是您单击那个小的窗口，它就会自动变化为大的窗口。如果您是在电脑上观看的话，也是同样的处理效果。如果您看到那个 PPT 它是在小窗口的话，那么您就单击它就会自动变为大窗口了。这个是我们一直在观看公开课的朋友们可能都比较熟悉的操作流程了。如果您是新到来的观众朋友，也很欢迎大家用这样的方法尽量让 PPT 看得完整一些。然后有需要 PPT 的朋友在直播之后也可以跟我来要，然后我就可以给到大家可以用自己业余的时间再多看一下。Okay, let's move to the next slides.
Excellent. So now we'll get through I'll show you some photos of surround projects. Some of these are in Australia. This particular one is actually in Europe. This is another sort of example of where I was talking earlier about you can cut things into interesting shapes to create things that are a little bit unusual. This is probably one of those images you show to an architect and they get excited. You show it to a builder and they probably think straight away, oh my God, I hate this architect. Because a building like this is always going to be more complicated to build. But it's also pretty exciting, and to be able to have the flexibility to do stuff like this is quite exciting. Not a huge amount of products actually allow that. So this was done with surround whitish base. And again, there's not a lot of contrast or changes in the actual cladding material, but by using some of the lines and the shapes in the building, they were able to make a building that's quite unique and quite different. If we jump over to the next one, this is a apartment building in Sydney. And again, they've used multiple different colours and finishes to get quite an interesting and quite busy pattern. It's quite a building that stands out quite a lot. And again, it's one of those ones I think you either really like it or maybe not. But I like things that are a bit different, so it works for me. This next image is a school in Australia. So again, this is using whitish base, greyish base and blackish base to have that sort of patchwork panel. And again, the panels have been cut up to different sizes to give quite a mixed up and different look. And that's all driven by what the design came from the architect as to what they wanted. So that could have been done in many different ways, but that's the particular way they went for. And so there's quite a lot of flexibility as to how you mix different colours and finishes. And then this last image is a townhouse development in Victoria, in Melbourne, I believe, and they've used the surround blackish base on the inside of those balconies and up into the soffites as well to tie it into the brickwork. And just to keep it, again, as low maintenance as possible. Again, one of the driving factors for this development was around maintenance. The people who are moving into these, they were quite high-end townhouses. They're typically busy people with not a lot of free time, so they wanted buildings that were as simple to maintain as possible and were going to look as good as they were when they moved in for a number of years down the track. If we jump over, now we'll start having a look at Cementel Barestone. We'll probably run through this a little bit faster simply because, like I said, the structure and the system between Barestone and Surround are actually identical, but there are some differences in the panel. So we just flick over to the next slide. Barestone comes out of Sydney in Australia, so a little bit closer to home than Europe. Uses the same aluminium rail system, and similar to Surround, can be horizontal, vertical, cut to angles, can be used externally or internally, it doesn't matter. The big difference with bare stone, though, is it's a raw fibre cement panel that's got a clear coat on it. So every single bare stone panel is going to be a little bit different from the next. You'll see changes in colour and texture and variation on it, and that's part of it. So if you want a product that's going to be completely uniform, then Surround is more the product for you. If you want something that's got some texture and some life and is a bit more natural, then bare stone's a better fit. They are the same size, so they're still that big 3 by 1.2 metre sheet. And these ones are actually a little bit heavier because they're 9 mils thick instead of 8. So you're talking up to about 65 kilos a sheet for these. But again, still classed as a lightweight cladding once it's all up on the wall. The next slide, this shows you the 4 colours that are available on bare stone. So, and you can kind of see here that unevenness in colour and the texture. And that's exactly what you're going to get with bare stone. The bare stone original, the top left, this has been available in Australia for between 15 and 20 years. I'm not exactly sure on when it was released over there. And then the 3 colours, the ash, the lunar, and the graphite, they were introduced relatively recently, only in the last couple of years. New Zealanders really love our greys, blacks, and whites. So this is, I think, going to be very, very popular for the New Zealand market. The colour scheme works well with the sort of timeless colour options, and I think it's going to be very popular, especially going on what they've done in Australia. It's been very, very popular over there. The next image we can skip through relatively quickly. This is the same structure and system as Surround, so nothing actually changes between the two. And then a summary for them, again, very similar to Surround. It's pre-finished, it's low maintenance. We are working through that code mark certification, which will come through at the same time as Surround. Large formats, very easy to install. With Territory, where you can mix and match the different different finishes to look like different cladding systems, you can also mix Surround and bare stone on a single job if you're wanting a mixture of the different colours or finishes there. So we just skip to the next one and then just skip one more. So these are some images of some bare stone projects. This is an office building in Sydney, in central Sydney, if I remember correctly, and then they've added all of this aluminium louvers over the top. It's one I've actually seen myself, and it looks absolutely stunning. So all of that light grey sort of colour under the thin louvers is bare stone, and that's installed over that building. So you're talking a 5-storey building, commercial space on the ground floor, and then a mixture of offices and apartments up above. And that went up quite a number of years ago, but looks absolutely stunning. The next image is, again, probably one of those things where a builder's going to look at it and go, bloody architects. But again, cool building, interesting design, crazy angles. I also feel sorry for the window manufacturer. You know, it's not going to be a simple window to build, but these are the things that you can do. And this is bare stone graphite. So again, using that darker panel, and you can see on this building, you've got that unevenness of the color. That's intentional, and that's part of the natural aspect of this product. In a way, it's actually really similar to bricks, where every brick is a little bit different. You get that natural variation. This is the same sort of thing. While Surround and Territory are a lot more uniform and consistent, bare stone, you're going to get that variation. So it's quite important that the customer, the end user, is aware of that, because if that's not what they want, we do have other products that can suit them. I seem to have found every image that is going to make a builder angry at an architect. I'm sorry. But again, this just does go to show some of the things you can do and some of the design flexibility that you have. Is this going a little bit too far? Maybe, but you can really start playing with lines and angles and add some quite interesting features to a build. And then the next one's even worse, to be fair. This is a really interesting roofline. I think what makes this one even worse for me is I know how heavy these panels are. So trying to hold them up in place over your head on an angle, a lot of work involved, but I mean, it looks absolutely stunning. So again, these are products that you can do some quite unusual and different things with to add some really interesting design to a building. And then finally, this is an image from the interior of a cafe over in Australia. And they've actually embedded some LED strip lights in it as well. So still playing with angles, but at least this is on a flat wall. So a builder will look at this and go, yeah, not too bad, I can do this one. The advantage with surround and bare stone for this type of application when you're cutting on funny angles, it's not a difficult product to cut. It's just cut with whatever you'd normally use to cut fibre cement. So a saw with a fibre cement blade. What we would recommend is a track saw where you can lay your track down and then you have a plunge saw that runs across it. The main reason for that is you always get a nice perfect straight cut every time. But you could cut this with just a circular saw with a fibre cement blade. So very easy to handle product. Just jump to almost our last slide. So we do have a team spread around the country. Myself, I'm based in Christchurch along with Brad. But we do also have Gerald in Wellington, and we've got both Mitch and Martin up in Auckland. So if you do need some assistance, feel free to have a chat to the spec advisor, the product spec team, or contact us directly. We're here to help, and we can talk you through options and what's going to be best for you. And that's pretty much it from us. So the main thing, next thing is, does anyone have any questions? And thanks very much for your time, everyone. But normally there's a few questions kicking in.
Absolutely.
So we've
got a lot to ask you, so this is great. So just coming back to the few, these weird angle and cutting involved. So how heavy or how hard it is to cut your panels, Jonathan?
It's not that difficult at all. Obviously, you'd make all your measurements and cut it flat on a bench or sitting on a pallet, for example, and then fit it up onto the wall. But with the right tools, and nothing's difficult. The plus side for this, the right tools are nothing special. It's a saw with a fibre cement blade. So it's the same blade you'd use to cut any other fibre cement product. Linear, for example, our territory product, surround and bare stones, all cut with the same blade.
Gotcha. And also, this is asking for an architect friend, is that sometimes they want to add something special for interior design. But if their cladding is not state of clad, but they just want to use some of your panel to add a bit of, extra style for inside of the building, how do they do this? Like, do they still talk to you guys, or is this, it doesn't really involve lots of specs?
Yeah, look, interior is always going to be easier. When you're dealing with exterior cladding, it's always designed around managing moisture and dealing with the building code. When you bring an exterior cladding inside, it really just becomes a decorative thing. So you don't have the same requirements. In a way, it makes life a lot easier because you don't have to follow such strict rules, and it gives you a lot more flexibility to do things interior than you can do exterior. So interior is easy. If someone wants to just use a small amount of cladding interior, again, come and talk to us. We can definitely make something work for them.
Yeah, and we also got one question. This person probably haven't used your products before. He's asking, where can they buy this from? Is it selling at all the merchants, or does it have to order through your guys?
So selling this product, often your merchants will kind of directly contact us. Or you can also directly contact us yourselves, and we can actually push you through a merchant or go directly through us.
Yeah, and I'm
we try and keep it flexible. It's whatever's easiest for the client, because most of our products tend to be quite technical, and there are quite a lot of components. And because we supply the full system, it's not something that merchants carry in stock, but we're quite happy to sell direct to clients, but at the same time, if they find it easier to deal with us direct, but they want to process that sale through a merchant and we just deliver it direct to their site, we're more than happy to do that as well.
Yeah, and I'm just putting your team's contact detail on the screen in case any of the audience want to get in touch with you. So, 如果我们的观众朋友有想要在不管您是位于奥克兰或者是新西兰的其他地方，想要在 State of Clad 订货，或者是聊一下你们下一个项目的一些安装细节，或者说是这个产品的选择是否符合您的这个项目的设计和灵感，那么他们这个整个团队联系方式现在已经在公屏上打出来了。Okay, we got another question. This person is a specifier, and he is saying that he's specifying a light steel frame and truss for a new project. and he's asking, will this cladding system go well with a light steel or steel structure?
Yes, so all of the products we've talked about today, all the systems, they're all available to use on steel or timber framing, and that includes sort of a light framing, like a residential steel frame type system. All of the details are available for that, and all of the fixings, not an issue.
Yeah, where can they find all the technical files or the support documents they may need to take into consideration? Is that going to be on your website?
Correct. Best place to go is always going to be stateofclad.co.nz. Anytime we make any changes, which doesn't happen often, but whenever we make changes, that's always updated first. So looking there will always give you the most up-to-date information.
Okay, awesome. And just coming to a couple of questions we got here. The first one is very interesting, is what is the panel made out of? Fiber.
So couple of different answers depending on the product here. So interestingly, they're both somewhat the same. All three systems are somewhat the same. The primary components are water, cement, sand, and some form of fiber to bind it all together. Cementel Surround and Cementel Bare Stone are more traditional fiber cement products. So again, they're built up in layers. Bare Stone is made with a cellulose fiber, which is actually New Zealand pine, is the fiber that binds it. Surround's a little bit different, where it actually uses primarily polyester as the fiber, and it's air cured rather than autoclaved. So it cures more slowly, and it's a denser product. Territory, for example, is slightly different again, where it's not built up in layers like a traditional fiber cement product, but it's made with the same components. So it's sand, cement, water, and timber fiber. But with Territory, the timber fiber is quite chunky in comparison, because it's a thick slurry pushed into a mold, compressed, and then autoclaved. You can actually see chunks of wood, while in typical fiber cement, they're very, very fine fibers. But same product, just manufactured in different ways.
Gotcha. And then the next question is, how do you prepare the framing? And is there a recommended format?
So we try and keep everything as simple as possible. So there's not a lot of work to do with anything specific to do with framing, for example. Territory, it's a Japanese product. So again, tolerances are very tight. So you do want your framing to be relatively straight. So it does make life a little bit easier if before your building wrap or your rigid air barrier goes on the wall, just to run a straight edge over it and make sure the frame's pretty straight. Unfortunately, we know what pre-nail's like in New Zealand and timber gauging. Sometimes it's not as perfect as we'd like. So yeah, just quickly run a straight edge over it. As long as it's pretty straight, you're fine. If it's really bad, give it a bit of a buzz with a planer, just like they do interior-wise before fixing the jib. If you're installing Territory vertically, we actually fix to the nogs, not to the stud. So just need to make sure that there are enough nogs and at the right centres. Typically, that's a 600mm centre, but it depends on the wind load. So again, check the technical manual or check with us, or check the plans, because that all should have been consented as part of the plans. Surround and Bare Stone is a little bit more flexible, because those horizontal rails go on first. If the wall's a little bit out, it is a bit easier to pack those, because you can pack the whole rail rather than having to pack each individual clip. So you've got a bit more flexibility with Surround and Bare Stone, but generally no special sort of requirement or materials for framing.
Yeah, I guess for lots of construction companies that haven't used state-of-clad systems before, they're quite conscious of, oh, what if I've never heard of, like, I don't know how to install these, and what if I've done anything wrong? So I guess you guys would provide some on-site training and installation support.
Yeah, and that's what our team like Brad do. That's a big part of their job, is they do spend that time on site working with people, especially people who haven't used our systems before. And that sort of comes down to both Mitch and Martin up in Auckland as well. I know most of our viewers are probably going to be based up in Auckland. We've got a couple of people up there, both of which are pretty experienced and know what they're doing. But we've also got Brad in Christchurch, and Gerald's based in Wellington. So we can cover most of New Zealand and provide that support for people.
Yeah, you go to the site and carry the hard sheet for the builders. Great work.
Pretty much.
And then the next question is, how do you cover any fixing marks?
Okay, so again, slightly different answer depending on the system. So with territory, most of the fixings are actually hidden. The clip that is used actually sort of hides within a tongue and groove joint, so most of the fixings aren't visible. Where you do have visible fixing, it's a stainless steel nail, and that's just hammered in flush with the panel and then touched up with a touch-up paint, which we supply, which is colour matched to the panel. Surround and bare stone, you do have a visible fixing in the pop rivet that's used, but it is colour matched to the panel. So it's visible and you see it, but it's not very obvious. But because that pop rivet is bigger than the hole that you drill, you actually don't get a lot of damage. It's a very easy system to install.
Gotcha. And I probably guess it would be really hard that people want to damage these cladding because it's pretty high dense. It's pretty dense.
Correct. It is pretty hard wearing, but things happen, especially over time. All of the panels, all of the different systems, we can take off individual panels and replace them if something happens. For example, on a house, if someone backs the car up and sort of backs a tow bar into the section next to the garage door, for example, and cracks a panel, that can be replaced and replaced pretty easily. So you're not talking about, thousands of dollars in repair bills to fix stuff that happens just, in the course of life.
Yeah. Only a couple of more questions to come. One is, are there any limitations to application because of weight?
The biggest limitation that we have is really around the wind load. All of our products can be used outside the scope of NZS 3604, so it's not just limited to 3-story buildings. We've done a number of buildings in territory up to 6-story, and we're working with a client at the moment in Auckland to reclad a 12-story building. But basically, we have a maximum wind load that the buildings can go up to. They're all classed as lightweight, so weight generally isn't an issue. It actually works out lighter than most other cladding systems. And then all of our systems are designed to be able to be used in Sea Spray Zone D as well, which is sort of another sort of challenging area in New Zealand. So you can use them right up to the coast.
Cool. And then for the second 2 systems that you're waiting for the Code Mark certification, and how long do you think for, say, specifiers need to wait for this, and what does it mean when they get the Code Mark approved?
Okay, so first part of that question, I don't know the answer to how long they'll have to wait. I'm hoping it's not going to be long because it has been it's been in for a little while, and the fact that we've already done the Australian Code Mark certification. So I'd say we'll be getting close. But the big advantage with Code Mark, and the reason we've used the Code Mark certification rather than other compliance pathways such as acceptable solutions or a brands appraisal, for example, nothing wrong with those other cladding, those compliance pathways. But what a Code Mark certification does, it's actually it's guaranteed that a particular product meets the stated clauses of the New Zealand Building Code, and it must be accepted by council. So that's really a really big thing for both specifiers, designers, and the sort of owners and developers, is they know they're not going to get held up in council because these products are guaranteed to meet the stated clauses of the building code, and councils have to accept them. So we might get a few RFIs. A lot of the time I believe it's councils asking questions about because they've missed something that's already been supplied, or they might be asking questions just to be able to reset the clock so they can have a bit more time. But generally, they're pretty simple questions we can answer pretty quickly. But yeah, the main thing with that Code Mark certification is it's guaranteed to be meet the clauses of the building.
Yeah, I'm just gonna translate this part because I think it's really important. 刚刚我有问到就是 Jonathan 关于这个 Code Mark 的问题啊，因为咱们现在这个 Cemental 的系统，它其实其中的一个系统 Cemental Territory 这个已经是被 Code Mark 认证过的，然后另外的2个系统，我们的 Bearstone 跟Surround， 他们是正在等待 Code Mark approve 的过程中，但他们其实已经在澳洲获得了 Code Mark 的批准。这个 Code Mark 意味着呢，当您想要为你的项目去使用这个 Cemetel 的系统的话呢，它其实是非常非常难被 Council challenge 的，因为 Code Mark 它几乎是一个有一点点像这个保护牌这样的形式啊，去保证您的系统是完全可以适用于任何项目的要求，并且也符合 Council 的各种要求。所以说，如果您希望在申请 BC 的过程中能够降低这个 RFI 或者说是减少等待时间的话，其实我们是非常推荐有 Code Mark 认证的系统对您的项目的快速推进来带来一个保障。Okay, just two more very important questions that I saved to the last. One is, can you tell us about the stock availability and the order lead time at this point?
Okay, so again, that depends on the product. So Cemetel territory, we carry a little over $2 million worth of stock here in New Zealand. So if it's actually some of our more popular products, lead time could be as quick as a few days. We've actually got product in stock in New Zealand, and we've actually got quite an exciting story I'll share with you all. Is one of our biggest customers, who is a builder of medium density housing, came to us last month and they said, oh, by the way, can we have this project delivered? And we were like, no, we don't have that one on our books. It was actually specified in another cladding system and they changed it because the other system wasn't able to supply. They'd forgotten to tell us. And then so they were like, oh, we need that on site next week. And we were able to supply about 1,500 square metres of product pretty much straight away, all out of stock in New Zealand. So, you know, we're actually in quite a good position compared to a lot of other people at the moment. So that's Cemetel territory. Cemetel Barestone does come out of Australia. We don't carry stock of it in New Zealand. So there is going to be a lead time on that. You're probably talking 2 to 3 months. And Surround is going to be a bit longer, possibly. Again, they carry reasonable stocks in Australia, so probably talking 2 to 3 months for that. If someone wanted to do a large-scale hotel, for example, and they needed 4,000 or 6,000 square metres, that's going to have to come out of Austria, and we'd be talking sort of more 4 to 5, possibly 6 month lead times on that.
Cool. Good to know that the most common apply for the residence projects is there's not much of a lead time and the stock is really available. That's great. And then the last one is, what are the price that we're looking at for the 3 systems, which is what usually builders would ask?
Yep, no, fair enough. Someone will normally ask that. So Cemetel territory is our most cost-effective system. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Brad, but probably 230 to 270 a square metre.
Yeah,
about that.
Max.
Yep. There's some variation depending on what corner they use, how much wastage there is, because the panels only come in one size.
The good thing with Cemetel territory is when you're designing around it, you can actually really utilise the product. I've had jobs go up below that kind of 230 a square metre mark before, just because they're using the product in a way they're not wasting too much and there's not too many components being supplied. So you actually get a really good price per it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Barestone's a little bit more expensive, probably more in the 300 to 400 square metre range, depending on finish and usage. And then Surround, which is more expensive, but it's also primarily geared at more of a commercial cladding. But that's sort of in the 450 to 650 a square metre range.
But I think everyone needs to keep in mind is this all comes with the buttons and the fixing. So you're not just looking at the material itself, and also we don't need to apply the paint and you don't need to wait for the paint to dry. So it's actually saving your time. When it comes to per square meter, simply just for the price, you think, oh, it's kind of expensive. But if you consider everything combined, then it's actually saving your money. So
the other thing to think of too, Lily, and everyone listening, is also around your maintenance. So if we take Cemetel territory, for example, you don't need to do anything to it for 30 years. If you take pretty much any other painted finish, you're going to be repainting every 10 years, sort of in a best case scenario, possibly as soon as every 5 to 7 years. But if we take a best case scenario of every 10 years, if you don't have to touch anything on territory for 30 years, that's 2 whole maintenance cycles you can remove from the cost of your building. And, you know, if you're in a 2 or a 3-story townhouse, that means scaffolding, that means commercial painters. You know, that's a lot of cost that you don't have to do twice for the life of your building before you even have to do something. So again, yes, it's definitely not the cheapest cladding system out there, but when you start looking at that whole of life cost, it's really quite affordable.
Yeah, that's really good to know. And I just want to emphasize one more time for our audience, you're not looking just for that one off payment. You're also thinking of the lifetime of the property and the homeowner's perspective as well. Cool. Yeah, excellent. That's all the questions we got for you today. And once again, all the contact details is on the screen right now. And is that okay if we share the presentation slides with our audience after? Okay, I'll convert it into PDF. Cool. And
excellent. And yeah, we're on product spec, smart spec. People can get in touch with us through the spec advisor team as well. So or directly. So any way that works for them, feel free to get in touch.
And you guys are coming up in Asian Construction Expo, right? That's the end of September.
Correct. We'll be there.
Cool. Many ways to get in touch with you guys. Cool. 那么很感谢大家今天对我们本次直播的关注啊，然后我们这个 State of Clad 团队的信息现在已经打在公屏上了。如果您是在奥克兰的2位朋友的话，可以联系他们North BDM 的2位，一个叫 Mitch， 一个叫 Martin， 他们的电话以及邮箱是在屏幕上的。之后我们也会把这个今天的 presentation 的幻灯片把它转为 PDF 的格式发到我们的直播群内。如果您还没有在直播群内的话呢，可以通过我们直播的详情页去扫码进入到我们的群聊内。平时也会有一些关于建筑行业内的活动以及交流给大家就是随时随地的带来。好，那么今天我们的公开课的主要内容就是这些，非常感谢您的关注。在9月24号啊，也就是本月的月底，在周六我们有奥克兰西北区的亚洲建筑博览会等大家到现场来跟我们互动。然后 State of Clad 他们也会作为参展商之一到我们的现场来，一定不要错过啊！9月24号的周六，在我们业内的工作的朋友们呢，也会获得 LBP 跟 CPD 的积分。期待那天跟大家在线下相见。然后我们下个周四呢，还有一场公开课是关于 H1 的更新，以及就是门窗这个系统，会由长城铝合金门窗跟 Otis 来带来。希望大家届时关注，可以点击一下屏幕上右上角的关注主播，来获得我们未来建筑会的所有公开课讯息。好，再次感谢我们 Brad 跟 Jonathan 为我们带来非常精彩的公开课，希望将来还会在直播间见到您。Thank you guys so much for the webinar today, and hopefully I'll see you very soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. See you,
everyone.
See you.
Bye.